I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation with Terry Wildman this morning. And I can't tell you, I mean, we've already said this a couple times, but it is such an honor and a privilege to have the Translation Council here with us. Big stuff. I have only sat in on just a small portion of the conversations. I'm so grateful that they let me kind of eavesdrop a little bit. Really important conversations are being had about the careful work of translation. So we'll get to that, but let me back up. I'm just all excited and introduce Terry Wildman. For those of you who don't know him, he is the lead translator, general editor and project manager for the First Nations translation of the Bible. We of course have the New Testament for those of you who might be new at IVP. This released almost a year ago. Later this month.
August 31st.
Yeah, so it's not even a year old yet. And it has just been widely received positively in so many spheres. It's been very encouraging. Every conference I take it to, people are just drawn to it. Every conference I take it to. Academic, women's conferences, pastor conferences, every conference I've taken it to. I'm going to take the Bible to our AACC, that's the American Association of Christian Counselors Conference. So I get to introduce this to that sphere as well. So just a real privilege to be able to take this fabulous product, this book, many places. Let's see. I thought we could start with Terry, and I'm so grateful for your time to talk about this with our team. Can you tell us a little bit about how in the world this all came about?
Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing and supporting our Native people in this work and getting this out there. I'm so glad I don't have to do what you do. You know, and this frees us up, frees me up and the council up to be able to work more effectively on this as you guys get the word out and get the books out there to everybody. This has just been in some ways, a shock and a surprise. I knew it was going to be, I really believed with all my heart it would be effective with our Native people, but I didn't know it had quite the impact it's had on non-Native people too. And so we see this, and I will get to how it happened, but we see this as not only a gift from a small group of Native people who are followers of Creator Sets Free to our cultures, our Native people. And we also see it as a gift from us, the majority culture also. And so to the larger body of Christ that exists. And so how it started, my wife Darlene, who's back over here, she's sitting right over here. We were living on the Hopi Indian Reservation in northern Arizona, serving at first with youth with a mission. And then after a couple of years, we started pastoring a mission church on Second Mesa on the Hopi Reservation. And as a pastor, we were using the NIV Bible. And we used to laughingly call it New Indian Version because all the churches were using NIV. And in some of the Bible studies I was in, and most of the Bible studies we did were done sort of in a westernized fashion. They weren't done in talking circle of the way our Native people culturally might talk about scriptures. It was more like read a scripture and everybody comments on it or something, or fills in the blanks on a page or something from the verse. And I really noticed that a lot of our Native people there, the Hopi, there was some Navajo there in the ministry we would do. And when we'd have a talk, a Bible study, they weren't engaging. And I was really trying to figure out why aren't people engaging? Why, and I began to realize that for these traditional people, the Bible was very foreign. It was a very foreign thing to read, things that had numbers and addresses by the verses, by the words and things. So I just had this idea. One day I picked up a book that had been put out. It was something about the Jesus way. And it was a small New Testament that was in the third grade reading level of the New International Readers version. And it had a nice Indian cover on it, but inside it's just a standard translation. But there was this little introduction to the New Testament. And in that introduction, several Native people from a ministry had put their heads together and they used wording in the introduction like creator. They called God creator. Well, no translation that that had been done in English for our Native people ever called God creator. It was always God, and so I looked, and this wording was, and it talked about walking a path with Jesus. And I thought, walking a path with Jesus, and I heard all this way of speaking, and I thought, well, we could do that with the scriptures. Why not? And so I experimented with that idea with some of the Native men and women on the res. That's how I engaged the Bible studies. Let's reword this for our Native people. How would we say this verse? How would we say this? And you know what? Everybody engaged. All of a sudden, the Bible became something that was exciting because they were figuring out what it meant and then re-saying it in a Native way. And so we worked on that, and I began to do so many scriptures, my favorite ones, that way. And then later, as we had developed this, my wife and I are recording artists. We do Rain song. We actually have produced about 5 or 6 CDs, but we produced a CD called The Great Story from the Sacred Book. Now, The Great Story from the Sacred Book was taking this idea of rewording the scriptures and giving it a sort of a Native American lingo style to it. And we did the whole story from creation to Christ, told in, I think, 18 tracks with Darlene playing the flute in the background and everything. And so we got that done with the help of other Native people and stuff. And we took all the Christianese out of it. We took all of the colonialism as much as we could out of the English and presented it that way. And we submitted that to the Native American Music Awards, and it won Best Spoken Word in 2008. And I thought, my goodness, something's happening here. This is the story of Jesus in the Bible. Just won the Native American Music Award for Best Spoken Word. How does that happen? I thought, well, let's submit it. But did I think we'd win? Absolutely not. But it won. And so that began a journey of practicing that. Then Darlene and I started traveling on the road, quit pastoring. I pastored the church for a while, but I had found that Hopi Bible in our storeroom. That's the part I need to tell real quick here. When I was pastoring, I told you we had the NIV, the New Indian Version. But I found a box in our church storeroom, and I opened it up, and it was the Hopi New Testament written in Hopi. Okay, and I got so excited. I thought, I'm going to get this Bible out. We're going to start using it, And I took it to our church members, and I said, "Look, I found the Hopi Bible." They go, "Oh yeah," and I said, "Can you read part of it to me?" No. None of us can read it. And it hit me. This couldn't be true everywhere, could it? And it was. All those translations, very few, I would say less than 5% of our Native people actually can read all these Bibles translated into our heart languages. And so the idea of, wow, we need a Bible that's worded in English. Since we're all speaking English now, we need a Bible worded in a way that our Native people are going to relate to the words that are spoken. And in the beginning, it was just simply changing the names of God, to great spirit and creator. That was a big leap, you know? And then we went further and we started removing other words that weren't making sense, like the word sin. Okay? In the Greek, what does that mean? Harmatia, to miss the mark, to fail to live the way we're created to live, right? We said, okay, for Native people, that word sin, it's a sin to speak in your language in boarding school. It's a sin to pray with smoke. It's a sin to do these things. Matter of fact, it's almost a sin to be an Indian. You have to become like us so you can follow Jesus. And so I began to see we need to remove these words that are trigger words that were used that have a negative connotation to our Native people and begin to replace it with appropriate words like broken ways, like bad hearts at times, like wrongdoings. It was a much simpler, complex concept, but yet it conveyed without raising those triggers. So that was kind of the idea. And eventually it took years and years and years for me to figure out that I was supposed to do it because no one else was. And so I committed myself to doing it and created, to end the story short, Creator sent a Bible translation organization who found us on the internet, and they came behind us and they said, how would you like us to support what you're doing in your project? And it was One Book of Canada. Dave Olson and his wife, Joan, are here, and they worked with One Book. He started One Book. He used to be the head of Wycliffe Canada. And in starting One Book had a new philosophy at that time. The indigenous people are the translators. We're only the helpers and the ones that give them the tools they need to do it, but they are the ones to do the translating. And so I thought, wow, this is a perfect organization to work with. And they raised funds, they got behind it so that I could spend the time doing it. They helped me figure out that we need to have a translation council. We need to meet together. They funded us a trip to Florida and to Calgary, Canada. They flew us all over the place. And they helped us figure out how we were going to do it together. So there's the short story.
I love that you all were able to hear that as well. I've heard parts of that story, but it's such a rich story. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to share that. So you are here to start translating Psalms and Proverbs. So excited about that. We've been hearing from people all over online and in person who've been wanting more. Now that we have the New Testament, we want more. So I'm curious. I mean, you're kind of just starting. How are you finding this translation process to be different from the work on the New Testament?
Well, one of the things is Hebrew and Greek are different languages. In case you didn't know that. Secondly, the Old Testament was written much longer ago than the New Testament was written. And it was written during a different time period of the New Testament. So different things were happening and going on that influences the meanings of words during that time period. And so we're trying to figure out, those things as we then take it from Hebrew through our kind of a native cultural lens into English. And I want to say this is in no way intended to be a replacement for translating into our mother tongues. Well, many of our tribes are revitalizing their languages, and we need new Bible translations in our languages. This is simply something we see as a stopgap to get there. And it's something that can fill in until those things are done. Did I answer the whole thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And I'll say, as a non-native reader of this, of the translation of the New Testament, I read it every day. I start with, I don't know, some other version, not NIV, but NRSV or something, and then I read the same passage in the First Nations version, and it has just enlivened my imagination, my understanding of Scripture. So I recommend that. To those of us who are non-native, that this is such a gift to us as well. So thank you for that too. And I recommend it to all of my spiritual direction directees. I start my sessions by reading from there. It's just been great. Okay, Now, the question that I get asked when I tell my friends and family, oh, the FNB Translation Council is going to be here on Psalms and Proverbs, they're like, how does that even work? You have people from different tribes and perspectives. How do you work together in this translation process? Do you have different roles, or can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, we worked for a week in Florida with Wycliffe Associates to try to determine how are we going to do this translation. Now, when you have a village of people, like in, say, in the Philippines or in Africa, and that whole village is together in one place, and they're all basically the same culture, it's easier to get a group dynamic translation going there. At least I've been told that that's true. So they wondered if this same kind of group method would work with us. Well, since we're geographically spread all over Turtle Island, that's what we call the United States or North America. Since we're geographically spread out, and we're from many different tribal tribes and languages that we originate within cultures and the differences, that's a challenge in itself. And so we tried could everybody kind of just, like, could one person do Colossians and another person do Philippians, but it didn't work. The style wouldn't fit together. The wording was quite different. And even if I was going to be, say, as the lead translator, going to take all what everybody else did and kind of stylize it correctly, it would take me longer to do that than it would be to have me do the initial work of the translating, and then have the council and others serve as reviewers. And so that's how we do it, except we don't actually get together physically to do it. We do it over Google Docs. All right, so Google Docs is a blessing to this translation because several people can work on the same document. And then, so I serve as a lead translator, as a project manager. So I manage all this. I give it out to the people who are doing the reviewing. I look at the comments and the feedback and reword things. But what we do also is this meeting here this week is about us kind of launching the project, bonding together, and also hearing from some Hebrew scholars and different people about what we're up against with Psalms and Proverbs. So those are some of the ways that we work together.
So I heard that you're working on a couple specific words today even that are really foundational. How's that going?
I don't know if we'll ever have a consensus on some words, but we're getting close.
Can you tell us what?
Well, actually, one of the words that we're spending a lot of time on, and it's interesting that different people have different reasons for wanting it to be different, but it's actually the Old Testament name for God, Yahweh. How do we translate Yahweh? You know, now Elohim's a little easier. We're a little more free with that. El and Elohim, we can just say creator, great spirit. We can use the same terms we used in the New Testament, maker of life, giver of breath, all these different ways that we felt free to use different tribal ways of speaking of the supreme being. But when we come to the Old Testament, we needed a word that was unique to that. What word should we use? Now, I have my idea of what I want, but we have a council. There are times I love councils. There are times that councils are challenging. And if you go to our reservations and go to tribal council meetings, you'll find out. Everybody has different ideas. And we got to somehow try to come to at least more people agreeing this way than believe that way. Okay, so, but anyway, we worked on Yahweh, and we haven't, we've settled on a possibility, but then there's the gender issue. So right now we're kind of working through Since we might call Yahweh grandfather, that's a term many of our tribes use of the Great Spirit. Not that he's a father of a father, but that he's the father of all fathers. He's grandfather is a term of respect and dignity. Well, not all of us have that in our tribes, the term grandfather. Some of us do. So we talked about that quite a bit, about the intimacy of the name, the respect that's behind the word grandfather when it's used, different things. But then there's the gender issue. It's a male term. Do we want to call Yahweh by a male term or a gender neutral term? So there's the possibility of ageless one, ancient one. We didn't use those in the New Testament. We wanted a unique word so that every time you read in the Psalms a certain designation for the creator, you know that the name behind that is the Hebrew name. We even considered the Hebrew name, but we thought, is that really respectful to the Hebrew people to do that? We thought maybe it's not, since that they don't like to do that. Maybe we shouldn't do that, just to respect their wishes on that. And so we looked at it from a cultural relating to the Hebrew people and how they feel about it a bit. So
So fascinating. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
To think about, like, that's just one word.